All right, so we're on the new heavens and new earth. And I want to start by, if you take out the outline that I passed out, and if you're watching on video, we'll have a PDF for you there to be able to follow along as well. But the title of this sermon was What Will Heaven Be Like? Revelation 21, 1 through 8. And let me just read that section of Scripture, Revelation 21, 1 through 8. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth. So again, the Scriptures actually use this language, a new heaven and a new earth. For the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and there's a lot of discussion on what that means. And the sea was no more, and there's a lot of discussion on, it's like surf. I grew up in Huntington Beach, and so like anybody who's a surfer is like, there's going to be no more sea? Like, that stinks, you know? And yeah, anyway, that's, we may or may not talk about that. But and I saw the holy city and New Jerusalem coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, Behold, the dwelling place of God is with man. He will dwell with them. Oh, let me make sure this is on. Yeah, sorry. He will dwell with man. He will dwell with them, and they will be his people, and God himself will be with them as their God. And he will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and death shall be no more. Neither shall there be mourning, nor crying, nor pain anymore. Oh man, thank you, Lord. For the former things have passed away. And he who was seated on the throne said, Behold, I am making all things new. And also he said, Write this down, for these words are trustworthy and true. And he said to me, It is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. To the thirsty I will give from the spring of the water of life without payment. The one who conquers will have this heritage, and I will be his God, and he will be my son. But as for the cowardly, the faithless, the detestable, as for murderers, the sexually immoral, sorcerers, idolaters, and all liars, their portion will be in the lake that burns with fire and sulfur, which is the second death. And so I have here as a big idea that God will establish a new heaven and a new earth where Christ will spend eternity among his redeemed people in perfect and constant communion. And then just let me read these paragraphs to you. I think they're just helpful in getting sort of the big picture of what this is going to be like. This is from C.S. Lewis, the first one from Mere Christianity. And again, he writes a lot about heaven in his works, and just always beautifully. But he says, a continual looking forward to the eternal world is not, as some modern people think, a form of escapism or wishful thinking. But one of the things a Christian is meant to do, it does not mean that we are to leave the present world as it is. If you read history, you will find that the Christians who did most for the present world were just those who thought most of the next. The apostles themselves who set on foot the conversion of the Roman Empire, the great men who built up the Middle Ages, the English evangelicals who abolished the slave trade, all left their mark on earth, precisely because their minds were occupied with heaven. It is since Christians have largely ceased to think of the other world that they have become so ineffective in this. And then this is a great line here. Aim at heaven, and you will get earth thrown in. Aim at earth, and you will get neither. Again, a really powerful line from Lewis. This next section is from Daniel Aiken in a commentary he wrote on Revelation. Indeed, one of the most wonderful things about the Bible is that its first two chapters, the devil is not there. And in the last two chapters, the devil is not there. Again, something you've probably never really thought about, but yeah, that's true. If you examine Genesis 1 and 2, you will find no mention of that ancient serpent. And if you examine Revelation 21 and 22, you will likewise find no mention of Satan. He's not there. He is in the lake of fire. Amen. Where he will be imprisoned for all eternity. These final two chapters unfold clearly a threefold division, 21, 1 through 8, 21, 9 through 22, 5, and 22, 6 through 21. They logically and theologically follow the second coming in 1911 through 21, the millennium in chapter 20, verses 1 to 6, the final rebellion in 27 to 10, and the great white throne judgment in 2011 through 15. The eternal destiny of the redeemed is so radically different from the eternal destiny of the lost. Only new and wonderful things are in the future for those who love God and trust in His Son. A new day is coming. As the old hymn says, when we all get together, when we all get to heaven, what a day of rejoicing that will be. What then is in store for those who live under the reign of this King? What will eternity be like? And then I've got a chart for you there. And this is just sort of interesting, comparing and contrasting Genesis 1 to 3 and Revelation 21 and 22. And so in Genesis 1:1, you have heaven and earth created. In Revelation 21:1, you have the new heaven and earth recreated. In Genesis 1:16, the sun created, but in Revelation 21:23, it says there's no need of the sun. In Genesis 1:5, the night is established, but in Revelation, there is no night. So no more daylight savings time, okay? Among other things. Yeah. The seas are created in 1:10, and 21:1 it says no more seas. The curse is announced in 3:14 to 17, and 22:3 it says there's no more curse. Death enters history in 3:19, but in 21:4 of Revelation, death exits history. No more death. 3:20. Man, I never thought of it. I just thought of it just now. I don't have to do any more funerals. Oh, that's awesome. Good. One less thing to do. Anyway, then you have humans driven from paradise in 3:24 of Genesis. You have humans restored to paradise in 22:14. Sorrow and pain begin in 3:17 of Genesis. Sorrow, tears, and pain end in 21:4 of Revelation. And then Satan appears in 3:1. Satan disappears in 2010. I love that. Just a great chart, just showing sort of the, again, so much to look forward to in heaven. So we may come back to this, but again, if you want to read the rest of it, what I did is I gave 5 realities to contemplate about our new heavenly home in here from this chapter. Okay, let's go ahead and go to the workbook. And in the workbook on page 253, pretty short chapter, especially in comparison with some of those. We had some monster ones recently. So you probably were like, wow, this was nice. I feel like I'm on vacation, And even the workbook didn't take very long. For maybe some of you. Dana always gets mad at me because she's like, how long did it take? I said, 10 minutes. She goes, 10 minutes? She's always like, anyway. But
I'm ruminating.
Yeah, she reflects on things a lot more, As a matter of fact, I don't know how you guys are as test takers or how you were in school. I always finish first. Like, I don't think I've ever taken a test where I didn't finish first. I don't know why that is. There's certain things I do fast. Driving a golf cart.
Oh.
I mean, I'm a maniac on the golf course. When you see those videos of people like falling down, that's going to happen to me someday. I mean, I don't know. There's certain things I'm just very fast. Yeah, but I've mellowed out a lot though. Yeah. No, the golf cart. There's no police on the golf cart. At least I haven't seen any yet. So, and they can only go so fast, So anyway, all right. Number 1 on page 253. True or false, the Bible teaches us that there will be new heavens and a new earth, an entirely renewed creation, and we will live there with God. True. Yes, true. Now, again, I don't know. How many of you have read Randy Alcorn's book on heaven? Who's read that? Okay, if you haven't read it, you need to. You have to. Again, as a Christian, you're going to spend, this life is a comma or a dot in light of eternity. It's nothing. It's a vapor, as Solomon said. But heaven is forever. That's our forever home.
My answer to 13 is read Alcorn's book, Heaven.
Okay, yeah. It is just I think it's just such a great treat to the church that he wrote that book. Again, it's in my top 10. It's definitely it's staying in my top 10. It will always be in my top 10. I'll have to move something else out other than Alcorn's book, because I just think, again, when you go on vacation, a lot of you, when you go on vacation, I mean, you'll read about where you're going and the history, or where to go, or where to eat, or whatever. But this is so much bigger than that. And Alcorn just does a phenomenal job of really writing a systematic theology of heaven. What does the whole Bible have to say about heaven? And then he does a really good job, because he's a good theologian, he does a really good job explaining things that we don't know for sure exactly what they mean. Like the sea, there will be no more sea. Well, what does that mean? And again, he just does a really good job of, I think, showing what things that we don't completely get are likely to be like based on Scripture and theology. So it's a wonderful book. It's a book, I've read it a few times. I'll read it again. And if you've never read it, you're in for a treat. If you've already read it, read it again. Give it away to as many people as you can. It's a great book to give up. By the way, Amanda is, I hope you don't mind me, can I share what you're doing? Amanda is giving away 10 books to her colleagues at work called God, Is God Real? And I read it yesterday. Okay, great. Okay, so she's way ahead of me. But Amanda's doing that, and the book she's given away, I read it yesterday, and what a great idea. It's such a great book, period, for Christians, but it's a great book to give to people, because a lot of people, they've thought about that. Whether they have admitted it or not, people have thought about that issue. Is God real? Is there a God? God, are you there? Is there any evidence for you? And go ahead and write that out. And thank you for writing this. See, notice that it's legible now because Amanda's writing it. So that's great. But yeah, there are certain books that you can give to people and be pretty confident that no matter where they're coming from, if they read and they're open-minded, this book could change their life. And Heaven is one of those books. This book, also by Strobel, Is God Real? If you care about anybody that's lost in your life, a family member, a friend, a coworker, get them this book and give it to them. And Amanda's going to write sort of like a testimonial. Tell them what you're planning on doing.
I'm just going to write a 1 or 2 paragraph testimonial and stick it in the book, so it sticks out so they can see it. It explains, like, this is why I'm giving you this. And if you ever want to talk to me about it, I'd love to have a chat.
Yeah. And Strobel's a guy who is an atheist. Maybe you've read some of his other, but The Case for Faith, The Case for Creation. It's that style. He interviews people. But again, what he's doing is he's really honing in and focusing on what is the best evidence for the existence of God, and in a way that lay people can understand. So it's
conversational.
It is.
Approachable and not like preachy.
Yeah. And the last guy he interviewed, it was cool because Ken Samples, I sat like that in Greek with him at Talbot together. He's become sort of a world-renowned apologist, but he's the last guy he interviews on the hiddenness of God. In philosophy, this is the new biggest objection to God. It's not evil anymore. Now the biggest objection is that God's invisible. He hides himself. Why doesn't he reveal himself more than he does? So that's the last chapter, and Ken Samples handles that, and he does a good job with that. But that's the new, if you deal with atheists, young atheists especially, that's what you're contending with. So it's a very good book, very helpful.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
About the true-false question?
Yes.
So when it says that it's an entirely renewed creation, as opposed
Right.
to a new creation,
Right.
given that the Word of God says what it says about the old creation passing away and
Right.
the sun and the moon hiding and fleeing and all of that, as I read it in the Theology book,
Right.
he's basing the fact that it's a renewed creation instead of a new creation on
Right.
the fact that creation was very good.
Yeah.
But given the explicit verses that say it's passing away, it's going to
Yeah. Well, the exact same language is used of when we become a new creation. God doesn't destroy our body. He restores it. It's the same thing. You know, if anyone is in Christ, 2 Corinthians 5:17, if anyone is in Christ, he's a new creation. The old is gone, the new has come. The Greek says the old has passed away, the new has come. Well, if anybody knew you before Christ and after Christ, they could still see they could see, oh, that's Jody, you know, because they know what you look like. So you didn't get destroyed, you got restored, you got renewed. And that's the same thing that God's going to do. When God created the heaven and earth, everything that exists, he said it was good. What made it bad was the fall. And so instead of just absolutely destroying it, where it doesn't exist anymore and creating, again, there are very few theologians that hold to that view. And that's why. It's the same thing. The idea is it's used as a euphemism, like Paul talking about those who are asleep. Well, they're not literally asleep. They look like that. When you see a dead person, they look like they're sleeping. Typically, you don't. I've never seen a dead person go, that person looks like he's working or partying or playing sports. No, you look at a dead person, and a dead person looks like they're asleep, and worse than that. But anyway, but the point is, it's a euphemism for something. It's not. There are certain things we take literally, of course, and then there are certain things that are euphemisms or hyperbolic. And I think that would be one of the cases.
Randy Alcorn did a really good job.
Yeah.
And gave me such a deeper understanding of the new heaven and the new earth. That I
he does.
Before. It's
Yeah. If you again, you have that book, right? Yeah. If you go through the. Yeah, if you probably reread what he has to say about that. But he's got 1 or 2 chapters on that, and again, he handles that well. But again, it's a good question. But again, I think a lot of people, there are certain ways that it's interesting that a lot of Christians think about things without researching it much. And I know you don't do it. You're not a person that does that. You research a lot. But there's a lot of people that just have ideas, like people becoming angels. Yeah. I mean, there's Christians that believe that. And it's like, well, you don't get that from the Word of God. I mean, you do get that from culture. I mean, you get that from Looney Tunes and, all kinds of stuff. But the reality is there's a lot of things that people believe the Bible teaches, or even sayings that God helps those who help themselves, A lot of people think that's in the Bible, So anyway, it's just, but that's one of those things that a lot of people, I think, believe. And so there are Christians, for instance, that their view is about environment stuff. There are people that are they're not just, think that environmentalists are crazy. They think that that's all a waste of time. I don't think that, because again, theologically, we're to be good stewards of the earth. We're to be good stewards of our bodies, good stewards of people, good stewards of our time. We're also to be good stewards but again, my hope isn't in that, because there's a lot of people in Marin. I mean, Marin is a bastion of people like this, that it's all about the earth and caring for the earth and the trees and whatever. And again, there's nothing wrong with that in and of itself, but what they're doing is they're worshiping the creation rather than the creator. And they're focusing on something that actually is going to be different. It's going to be restored. But they can't do it. They don't have the ability to restore it. God does. And so I think a good theology is we do the best we can to take care of the earth. But again, I'm not worried about the earth burning up or about the earth. Whatever God does, He's going to restore it. And it's just like people ask me all the time, one of the biggest questions I get is, should I be cremated or not? What does the Bible have to say about that? And my first thing always is, have you ever seen a war movie? Have you ever seen something from like World War I or World War II where people get blown up? Do you think if that person was a Christian that it's like, oh darn, they didn't get, they weren't able to be buried, there's nothing I can do now? It's like, no. I mean, for God, it's no big deal. If you're reduced to a few bits and pieces or completely laid out, it is nothing for God to resurrect that body better than it ever was, no matter what the condition is at death. It's nothing for God. So So there's a lot of times where people, I think about, they read something or think about, and again, that's why systematic theology is good, is what do the other scriptures have to say about this? And that's a perfect example. We have the old body doesn't get destroyed, the earth doesn't get destroyed, but it gets restored, it gets renewed. So thanks for bringing that up. I think that's a good question. Okay, number 2 was define heaven. So how did you define heaven?
I went to the glossary.
Okay, good. That's the best place to go.
Which actually took what it said in the chapter and condensed it.
Yeah.
A place where God most fully makes known his presence to bless.
Mm-hmm.
In heaven is where God most fully reveals his glory, and where angels and heavenly creatures and the redeemed, and I can't read my... Saints, thank you, worship him.
Yes. Yes. Good.
That's good.
Yeah. So again, the place where God makes most fully known his presence to bless. Mm-hmm. It is in heaven where God most fully reveals his glory to the saints, angels, other creatures that worship him. Okay, good. Any questions on that? Okay, the third question is a fill-in, and what's that fill-in? Heaven is a place, not just a state of mind. Okay, and again, what Alcorn's book does again, one of the reasons why it's such a good book to read is it dispels the abstractness of heaven and the spiritualization of heaven. Again, if you watch cartoons and movies, it's often clouds and things floating around and harps and what have you. And as a drummer, I mean, the last thing I want to do is play a harp for forever, you know. So again, not that the harp isn't a beautiful instrument. It is a beautiful instrument,
But you just gotta have drums.
yeah, but I'd rather play drums than the harp. So anyway, or listen to the drums.
More cowbell.
Yeah. But again, what he does, he dispels the whole notion that was brought about by Greek thinking, which is that the material is evil. You know, that anything material is evil. And in Greek philosophy, the goal, nirvana, they didn't use the term nirvana, but the type of thing that is nirvana, reaching nirvana for some Asian cultures, for the Greeks to reach the highest point of heaven or nirvana would be to be liberated from anything material, which for humans is the body. It's the liberation of the soul from the body. Well, that's not what the Bible teaches. The Bible teaches the restoration of the body, the resurrection of the body, and the restoration of the body. And God made bodies good. Mm-hmm. And what was the commercial? Milk does a body good. You remember that? That was a big advertisement from them. Well, God does a body better. Okay? Yeah, that's my advertisement. God does a body better. All right. But again, the whole idea of place, it is interesting to me how many Christians, they just don't think of heaven that way. Right. They don't think of it being a place with things and streets and buildings and, whatever. I truly believe that we're going to play baseball. I believe there is going to be surfing. I just think that the water situation is going to be different than it is now. Like I think that like salt, it's not going to be salt water anymore. And I can't prove any of this. I'm just speculating. But I think that everything that you love here, if it's not, as long as it's not sin. But everything you love here, hiking, a lot of you like nature. Well, you're going to experience incredible, beautiful nature for eternity. And it's not like God creates something, then he stops. I mean, I believe God's going to keep creating things, keep design. And designers are going to keep designing things. Architects are going to keep building things. But again, you're not going to have to, if you're a builder, like in California, I can't imagine being a builder in California. It's hard to imagine being anything, but we have to. We live here, right? But anything you do in California, it's more expensive. There's more regulations. Everything is a pain in the neck. It just is. And that's in a fallen world, okay, with a lot of Marxists that are controlling things, and they ruin everything. So anyway, heaven's not going to be like that. But again, if you can imagine the most beautiful places you've ever been, well, in heaven, there's going to be no shanty towns. You don't go to the city like San Francisco and have to watch where you're stepping because of needles and poop all over the place and people all over the place. Well, heaven's not going to be that way. But it's going to be a beautiful place where everywhere you go is beautiful and perfectly maintained. And so when you think of heaven, think of beautiful places. Like somebody was somebody in here that's going to Bouchard Gardens? Somebody from church has never been there and they're going there. If you've ever been there, that's one of the most beautiful places I've been. Who's been there? Isn't it beautiful? I don't know about you, when I went there, it's like, this has to be what the Garden of Eden was like, or something like this, And again, the Garden of Eden was probably more spectacular even. But where is it? Vancouver?
Vancouver Island.
Vancouver Island, yeah.
Filoli Gardens isn't bad either down on the peninsula.
What is it called?
Filoli.
Filoli. It's here in
Yeah, just
really?
down on the peninsula.
Okay, I'll have to check that out.
Near Woodside, I think.
Yeah, but again, when you think of heaven, and again, Alcorn helps you with this because, and again, Alcorn's just building off of what the scriptures say. But again, what the scriptures have to say about heaven, admittedly, is not abstract. It's very concrete. All the descriptions of heaven we can picture. You can picture it. It's not something you have to think like a mathematical equation about that is just more abstract. It's actually concrete. Because when there's a river, we know what a river is like. When it says streets of gold, we know what the gold's like and we know what streets are like. And I don't know what they do with our money in California. I'm glad I don't know probably. But like just driving on the streets here, it's like, where did all the money I just paid taxes for go to? And I hate to think about where it went. But it's like, can't they fix the stinking potholes? All these potholes on the freeway, And it's millions of dollars we're paying in tag when you take everybody in consolidation. Where's this going? But in heaven, no potholes. And
It's like getting here this morning.
what?
There's a landslide getting here this morning.
Yeah.
Paradise, just falling apart.
Yeah. Yeah. Chuck. Yeah.
I remember back in the early 70s, I went to Marin Free Evangelical Church on 5th and 8th Street, San Rafael. And Pastor Sam Wahlberg, he started a little Bible study over at my mother and father's house in Tam Valley. And, it gathered a group of people who also went to the church. But he said some things to me which I just don't, they seem to be off a little. He said, what you will be doing, I worked as a machinist, tool and die maker, and he said, you'll be doing machine shop work in heaven. And I thought, what? Machine shop work in heaven? It seems so far off because you've got the AI coming in, it's taking over work from men. So I couldn't relate it because we would have to be going backwards for me to be doing as we manufactured years ago.
Well, again, the thing about anything, even some of the things I've just said, again, you have to take everything with a grain of salt. If the Bible doesn't specifically address something, it's all speculation. We don't know. So but it wouldn't surprise me that you're using the kind of, you're continuing to advance in the skills that you have. Now, whether it's the same thing or something similar or something totally different, we don't really know. But it's one thing we do. One thing I can say for sure: we're not going to be bored. And work is going to be everything's going to be enjoyable. It doesn't matter what it is, work. But now work is, and that was part of the curse, is that we were working before the fall. But now work since the fall it's hard. You have challenges whenever you work and competition and so forth. But again, I think working in heaven is going to be, it's sort of like, at our Christmas party the other night, Julie always gets these gingerbread houses. Well, you were there. Gets these gingerbread. And some people do a great job with them, and some people like me, just it's a disaster. But again, I think it's the type of thing where you're not being judged, it's just fun. You're just having fun. Doesn't matter how it turns. I think in heaven, it's, I always allude to Seinfeld because it factors into everything for whatever reason. But George Costanza is like he's an idiot. He just is. And so George, he tells his friends, he says, I hardly get any work done at work. But he said, when my boss comes in, I always look frustrated, and he's like, he's hitting his head and banging his head on the wall and shaking the thing. So his boss thinks he's busy, and what he's doing, he's just trying to kill a fly. He's like, hitting the thing, and his boss looks through the window. Oh, poor George, he's so stressed out because all the work I gave him, and he's not even working, but he says, yeah, all you have to do is just look frustrated. Is what he's telling his buddies. And in heaven, there's going to be, I really believe there's going to be absolutely no frustration. So when you put together an IKEA thing, like for a guy like me who's not handy, to me, the worst thing in the world is to put something together. Like I need everybody gone. Everybody needs to be out of the house. I got to lay everything out, like one by one, step by step. And what inevitably happens is something's missing. Wow. Like I'm at stage 17 and it's like, there's nothing that looks like this screw. And now I got to go back to the stinking, I am a mess when I have to put something together. Nothing frustrates me more in the world.
What I put down for number 15 is there will be work, but no toil.
Yeah, I think that's good. Because again, we're not going to get tired, frustrated, whatever. So again, Chuck, I think that in one sense, he's probably right that you will continue to develop whatever skills you already have. We're not going to be dumber. We're not going to be slower. Again, everything that we already know we're going to move beyond that. But again, if your starting point, if you die as a 4-year-old and you die as an 80-year-old, obviously you bring more skills with you. You bring more history, you bring more intelligence and whatever. But again, when you get to heaven, I still don't think there's going to be an equality. I think we're still going to retain personalities and all that kind of stuff. But again, without the fallenness of those things. But we can enhance those things. So I think of musicians. If you're a musician, you get to spend time with Bach. Hands down the greatest musician who ever lived. Nobody comes close. And he's influenced everyone and everything. Anybody who's a musician pretty much has been if you're into music, you've been influenced by Bach. Well, he's going to be in heaven. And you get to spend time with that guy. His classes are going to be pretty big. When he says, okay, I'm going to give music 101. There's going to be 2 billion people sitting there going, okay, and you don't even need to take notes because you're going to remember stuff now. Anyway.
And what has he written since he's been there?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So anyway, but again, a person like Bach, you think of, he was a genius here, but he's going to be more intelligent and have more abilities and continue to grow in that. But again, you have eternity. So R.C. Sproul always talked about this, and I think he's right. He said, I'm going to spend 1,000 years playing violin and mastering the violin, and then I'm going to spend 1,000 years mastering the piano. And he was already a good violinist and pianist anyway. And I'm going to spend 1,000 years honing my golf skills, and and again, you can do that. You're finally got, because what do we always say here? I would do this if I had the time or the money.
Can you imagine golf without the frustration?
I don't get too frustrated. I just have fun. Some people do. But that's sin. They're taking it too seriously.
I learn piano, but I can't play it. Will I be able to do it?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Well, because I saw people who can play, I just love it, but then I just
Yeah.
don't have the rhythm in me to
Yeah.
really play it.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good point, Supan. And I really believe this, that there are, like, again, I'm not a handy guy, but I would love to be able to do woodwork in heaven and actually be able to do it well.
And he actually has books.
I think I've given them away, but yeah, at one time I had like all these books on, but again, it's just, but I do believe that there's certain things that we like some of you enjoy, like somebody who sings well, and you don't particularly sing that well. Or maybe you're unself-aware. And somebody needs to tell you don't sing that well. But no, I mean, I think there are we probably all have things that we really admire or appreciate, but we're not good at it. Like for me, it's art. Like I'm a horrible artist, but I love art. I love reading about it. I love seeing good art. I mean, I could spend 2 weeks in the Louvre. Yeah, or probably more, and never be exhausted. I mean, I'm the type that could just stare at a painting for hours. Like, I hate it that you just have to look at it and go away because you got to see all this stuff. But I'd love to be able to just look at it, and I love when you hear an art history person talk about the background about this and why this was innovative and all, and you don't know any of that stuff, and you're just listening, you're going, whoa, there's way more than, it's made way more than just what you see. And I think heaven's going to be just a constant like that. But again, you're not going to be overwhelmed. Like now we would be overwhelmed if we had to do all this now, and we are sometimes overwhelmed by life. But again, in heaven, you can relax and like I could run into Ron, we got to do lunch sometime. And it's like, how about in 1,000 years, I'm booked, for the next 999, but in 1,000 years, and again, it's no big deal because we're going to get there, we're going to see, again, hopefully it happens more than that, but again, it's the type of thing where it doesn't matter because money is going to be no object, time's going to be no object, and ability is going to be no object because again, you're continually growing and adding to your repertoire.
And I like the whole picture of everything gets newer each day. That's such a different concept for us to think about.
Yeah. So Greek uses two words, kainos and chronos is time. Like right now I'm watching the time, we got about 40 minutes left. In heaven, the concept of time is kainos, which means that everything is constantly being renewed. So a simple way to think about, or an illustration I always use is with cars. If you've ever I've only gotten a new car once, I think. Once or twice, maybe twice. But when you get a new car, I almost actually prefer getting an old car because then when you spill something or whatever, it doesn't matter. There's already stains, there's already whatever. But when you get a new car, it's like you're sort of protective about it. You park in special places and But then at some point you're eating your In-N-Out hamburger and sauce falls on the seat and you can't get the stain out. And I do that. You probably don't do that, but I do that. And before somebody dents it in the parking lot. And you're not going to spend all the money to fix it. You just live with it. And before you know it, you don't even see it anymore. Well, same thing with paint. If you live at the beach, I lived at the beach for years. Well, things start rusting. And you got to paint more when you live by the beach. You got to paint your house. It's expensive to live by the beach because you're painting all the time. Well, why? Because things start wearing out. Things start rusting out, wearing out, whatever. Well, in heaven, what would be a dream? Guys are really into cars typically. Any of you guys into cars? What would be your dream car for any of you? Yeah, Chuck, you're into cars. What's if you could have, money was no object, you could have any car you want, what would it be?
Well, I would probably go back to one of the cars decades ago, and it would probably be something like might not sound so hot, but a Studebaker or a Tucker or
Okay.
Tucker, ooh.
Okay.
But then there's the Bentleys and the Jaguars and
Right.
the early Corvettes.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah. So you like the real stuff. Yeah. So again, so if you think, again, you've got all these ideas, all these different cars. Well, like a person like Reggie Jackson, for instance, I think he's got over 100 cars. I think Ian Fleming, who wrote the James Bond series, had like 100 cars. I mean, these guys collected cars. Jerry Seinfeld, Jay Leno. These guys collect all. Well, but the thing is, again, you got to have a lot of money to do that. You got to, and on and on. But that's the thing. Like, if you're into that, I can't fathom that you're not going to be able to do that. Because there's nothing wrong with it. As a matter of fact, it's a good thing. We're going to have roads. We know that. So you can walk on it or you can drive on it. Why not? Again, you're a pilot. Are we going to have planes? I think so. And so again, there's a lot of people that think about their dream car, their dream plane, their dream boat, their dream house, whatever. I've thought about my house. My house, if anybody knows me, what's the number one thing I'm going to have in my house? Library. Yeah, bookcases. It's just going to be a gazillion books. I don't even care about anything else. I can go over to eat with somebody. I can go to Cordy's to eat. I don't need a kitchen. Cordy's still going to be cooking. It's like, what are you doing today, Cordy? I'll bring the books. You provide the food. And again, people are just going to gather at my house to read. It's like we're going to be great chairs to read in all over the place, and we're going to discuss books. Yeah, but again, I think most of us have thought about things like that. You may not even know what your ideal living situation. Like, you might think it would be living in the mountains or by the beach, and maybe not. Maybe you do that for a while. But again, God knows. And I love that Jesus said, "I go to prepare a place for you." And what was he here? He was a carpenter. Is he actually going to do the building? Maybe. I wouldn't doubt it. Yeah.
What about Bible study in heaven?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Footnote 9 I really liked, because there's a famous pastor who teaches there won't be any Bible study.
He's...
know it all. But
Nah, he's out there.
God knows it all.
No, well, of course. Yeah, of course we're going to study the Bible. Yeah. And again, can you imagine sitting with Luther and Edwards and those guys and them talking about predestination? How interesting is that going to be? But again, all of us. Yeah, but all of us are going to get there, even with what we know now. And there's certain things I believe that are wrong. There's certain things you believe that are wrong. Again, we're not there's nothing about us that's perfect. And so even the way we think. Now again, it doesn't mean that we don't want to know the truth and pursue the truth, and hopefully we know more right than wrong. But yeah, these are kinds of things that I think are fun to think about, when we think about heaven. But again, I think the greatest thing about heaven, honestly, is that we get to be with Jesus. And how wonderful is that going to be? Being able to actually see him face to face and interact with him. What an amazing thing, Okay, what is some of the biblical evidence that heaven is a place? So what kind of things did you write down for that?
He put 4 things that I wrote down.
Okay.
Jesus ascended to heaven.
Mm-hmm.
Stephen gazed into heaven and saw Jesus standing. Resurrection bodies need a place to inhabit. And Jesus said, "I go to prepare a place for you."
Okay, great.
I said the prepositions.
You what?
I said the prepositions, like into heaven.
Oh.
And ascension to heaven and from heaven. It's all all the prepositions are refer to a place.
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
Well, also in Revelation 21, so I was studying this last night. My 15-year-old son was looking over my shoulder, and as kids, they have that ethereal view of the harps and the clouds. And
right.
He said, "It's really a place?" I said, "Yeah." "Well, how big is it going to be?" "Well, 1,400 width, breadth."
Yeah, it actually
1,400 miles.
gives dimensions, yeah.
That's a cube, right?
Yeah.
Well, what's the math? That was 2.7 billion cubic miles. How are we going to fit? There's a billion Christians, so he's doing the math in his head, right? Well, the rest of everybody goes to hell, so hell's got to be a lot bigger than that, right? If there's 8 billion people and 7 billion people going to hell. But so 1,400 by 1,400 by 1,400, that's half the size of the U.S. How's that going to fit in the New Jerusalem? And he's starting to ask all these more logical questions that
Yeah.
we initially have answers to, but he got the concept that it's a place.
Yeah.
1,400 miles, okay, that's about half the size of the U.S., right? How's that going to fit? What's everybody going to do? Where are they going to be? But at least we're having that discussion, right?
Yeah.
He's getting that it's going to be here,
Yeah.
newly created.
Yeah.
David cruising around in a 500 horsepower golf cart with his ponytail back. Driving around.
You got your flag.
But the concept of how's it all going to fit, and it made me think a lot more about
Yeah.
the physical presence
Yeah.
of what it's going to be.
Yeah.
It's neat.
No, that's great. And again, you know, that's just the dimensions don't take into consideration all of creation. The reality is it's bigger than that. And much bigger. So again, Alcorn in his book deals with that, and the computation by conservatively of just what we know by the current dimensions is that it would be like 40 square miles per person, based on the billions of people that are likely to be saved, you know, from history up to this point. But again, there are quite a few people that have written about this, but Alcorn's a good start. But if you read any book on heaven worth its salt, as a matter of fact, I have a few in the bibliography here.
Surprise. Never have
Oh no! Yeah, I do. Okay, so on page 6. I give you, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 books on heaven there. And all of those books address that, except for the immortality book by Moreland and Habermas. But by the way, that book by Moreland and Habermas related to the question of the hiddenness of God is NDEs, near-death experiences, and scientific studies by neurologists are overwhelming that the body is not just material, that we have a soul. I mean, there's really no way around this unless you just ignore it or you just don't deal with it. But it's one of the best arguments that we have for the existence of the soul, is what modern-day neurologists... But a good place to start with that is that book. Immorality, on page 6 of the outline I gave you, J.P. Moreland and Gary Habermas, Immortality, the Other Side of Death. He was one of my professors at Talbot, Moreland was. And Gary Habermas is the world's foremost expert on evidence for the resurrection. He's in the middle of writing a 4-volume. Each volume he's writing is 1,000 pages on the resurrection. And I've got the first 2 books he's written, but this will be his magnum. It'll be 4,000 pages defending the resurrection in every way you possibly can, philosophically, historic, whatever. But he is and for him, it was a personal thing, because his wife died of cancer. They were in their 30s, and his wife died of cancer, and it was devastating to him. And so as a Christian, he really wanted to know, how much evidence is there for life after death? How much evidence is there for the resurrection, that Jesus rose and that we're going to rise? And so he was on a personal quest to go after this as a philosopher. And so, but again, if you read anything by Habermas, he's very passionate about the reality. You know, he's been asked, like, how certain are you of the resurrection? And he says, I'm as certain of the resurrection as I'm as certain as anything. If there's anything that we could say is certain, I'm just as certain about the resurrection. And he just decided, you know, he's already written like 15 books on the resurrection, but he said, before I die, I want to write 4,000 pages of scholarly material on the best material there is for the resurrection. And again, those 2 things, Christianity stands or falls on the resurrection. Yeah, that's what the Apostle Paul said in 1 Corinthians 15. So as Christians, we should know as much evidence as we can to be convinced ourselves so that we can tell others. But again, the more convinced you are, you know, if I have there's certain things that you're convinced of. Like for all of you, probably there's like a favorite meal or something that's close to a favorite meal. And if you were to say what that is, you would describe it, right? You would be able to describe it. Why? Because you've experienced it. And for the apostles, what they did is they were willing to die. Why? Because they experienced the resurrection. And no one could take that away from them. And the proof is in the pudding. They went from denying him to dying for him. And so again, the evidence for the resurrection is huge. But again, the evidence that is being uncovered for the reality of the soul is huge right now. From non-believers, from neuroscientists. And so it just substantiates what the Bible says is already true. Okay, number 5. Another fill in the blanks. And I had trouble finding this. And I don't even know if I ever did find it. I just sort of guessed. But you found it, Amanda?
It's a heading.
Well, it was a trick. They were in the headers. All of these were in the
These were
headers.
Okay.
First time I remember
Yes.
that.
number 3 heading.
Okay, number 3.
Yeah.
The physical.
Okay, so this was the fill in the blanks for 5. The physical creation will be renewed and we will continue to exist and act in it. Okay, I missed that. I got that wrong. Yeah, I put the new creation will be eternal and we will continue to serve and worship in it, which is true, but yeah, so the answer is the physical creation will be renewed and we will continue to exist and act in it. Okay. Number 6, in the new heavens and the new earth we will live in resurrected bodies.
When you're doing the workbook pages for
Yeah.
the historical,
Right.
leave longer blanks for the fill in the blank ones so that we have room
Yeah.
to write.
Yeah, what I'm probably going to do is I'm just going to I'll have like I do with life group, except there'll be more space for you, but it'll just be open space. Yeah.
Not enough space already.
Yeah. Okay, number 7, the new creation will not be timeless, but will include an unending succession of moments. Okay. Anybody want to try to explain that? That's sort of a weird concept.
Well, time is linear, and this describes the linearness of time. Does that work?
Yeah, I just think it's hard for us to fathom this.
Yeah.
Because we haven't experienced it before. Yeah, and we're very time conscious.
That's how we live now.
Yeah.
So we'll continue to live the same, one moment
Yeah.
follows the next because we're finite.
Yeah.
So we can't be outside of
Right.
time.
Yeah, like I don't think, I think there's going to be some way of communication, like if we're going to get to dinner together, like if we're going to have let's have a systematic theology reunion, and we're going to have dinner. And it's like, Cordy, you're planning this thing out, and we're meeting at her mansion, So again, but are we going to say meet at such and such a time, or is it going to be the type of thing where is there some other way to identify how we're going to meet because time doesn't exist in the way that we understand it now. However, we will be existing, and that will go on for eternity, but will we still measure it in a time way the way we do now? It doesn't seem like that would be the case if it's eternal. So anyway, we don't know, but it's another weird thing to think about. All right, number 8. What does the doctrine of the new creation provide motivation for?
Storing up treasure in heaven.
Rather than on earth.
Yeah. Yeah, Dana and I don't know if you ever watched Beckett Cook. He's really worth watching. He's got so many good programs on there, but he just had a lady who, she married the heir to Arm & Hammer, Arm & Hammer baking soda, but the big money maker for him was oil. But her son is a famous actor. I'd never heard of him, but it turns out I've watched him. I've seen him in a few movies because the Death in the Nile, the Agatha Christie movie that recently he's in. But anyway, her son, one of her sons, is Armie Hammer, and apparently he's this big time actor. But she was talking about, okay, I got to get back to why did I even bring this up? It had something to do, treasures in heaven. She got to witness to Lady Diana 3 times. She was in this very upper crust of society where, you met with people that were very influential and wealthy and what have you. So anyway, 3 different occasions she got to meet Lady Diana. And Lady Diana remembered her. The second time she walked up to her, she knew who she was, and they had this conversation. And she's a Pentecostal, very outspoken about her faith. I mean, and you could just tell by the way she interviewed with Becket Cook. She loves talking about Jesus. She's not going to shy down or back down from talking about Jesus. But she talked to Lady Diana, and when the heiress, Armand Hammer's wife, died, apparently she had one of the most well-known jewelry collections on the planet. And if you knew anything about Lady Diana, actually went to London after her and Prince Charles got married, and they had an exhibition where they displayed all their presents. And there were a lot of jewels from all over the world, from different kings and queens and what have you around the world. It was pretty spectacular. And so Lady Diana herself had an incredible jewelry collection. So she asked this woman who's a believer, who got all the jewels? And she said, I did. But she said, you know what's more important than that? Is she said, she died, but she left all that behind. But the most important thing she had is she had a relationship with Jesus, and now she's with Jesus. And so she didn't really leave anything behind. She has everything she needs. And she shared that with Lady Diana. And she got to spend, a few more minutes talking to her about it and just shared the gospel with her. She also got to write her she had her personal address and was able to write her, her husband had cheated on her, and he was a serial adulterer throughout their marriage, actually. And so they ended up getting divorced after 25 years of marriage. And Lady Diana, of course, had what happened with her with Prince Charles. So she wrote her this long letter just as a testimony of how she was able to get through that with the help of Christ. And she never heard from her, but she just shared with Becket Cook, I really believe that she's going to be in heaven. She said, out of the seeds that were, not just from me, but she knew of other believers that also were able to share with the gospel. And she was always very open to it. But she believed that she had enough input, enough seeds planted in her life where that she's hopeful that she's going to be in heaven. Again, we have no way of knowing that. But the point is, the reason I tell you about that is storing up treasures in heaven is that a lot of people, a lot of even Christians, I think, live too much for what they're storing up here. That's just going to be left behind. And it's so important to really have this mentality. And I think the more you mature as a Christian, the more you have this mentality is everything I do for the Lord, everything I give to the Lord, that's what's going to last forever. And hopefully that motivates you. And again, it's a wonderful thing to be able to know that you can invest in something that's never going to crumble. It's always going to last. You're never going to wish I wish I wouldn't have given that money to those missionaries. I mean, I hope you never think that way. If anything, it's like, man, I wish I could give more. I wish I could do more to help the cause of Christ around the world. All right, number 9, the new creation will be a what? A place of great beauty and abundance and joy in the presence of God. So not bad, right? Great beauty, great abundance, great joy in the presence of God. Number 10, in the heavenly city we will be able to endure the power and holiness of the presence of God's glory. And again, that is an amazing thing because the encounters that people had with God in the Old Testament, for example, they were devastated. You know, I mean, just absolutely devastated, whether it's Moses or Isaiah or whatever. I mean, they could not be in the presence of God without just almost being annihilated. You know, just his glory is so spectacular and our sin is so great. But to have the sin barrier removed completely, you know, not just positionally, but truly, where we could never have a sinful thought again. You know, we can never say something that's sinful. We can never think something that's sinful. I mean, that's just an amazing thing, reality of incredible grace on God's part, because we don't deserve that. But we get to live like the perfect Adam, who is Jesus, forever. All right, and then number 11, when we finally see the Lord face to face, our hearts will want nothing else. True or false? True. Yeah. And again, that's an amazing thing, because we all of us long for something more than what we have right now, whether it's in a relationship or, you know, a position, money, what have you. But again, to actually be in a place where we're completely content and satisfied and are able to just enjoy that forever, nonstop. That's a pretty,
moment.
Yeah, but forever, you know, forever and ever. Okay, thinking critically, Grudem says that heaven will be a place and not just a state of mind. Do you think most Christians have an overly spiritualized idea of heaven that is not sufficiently physical and located in a place? And then the second part of that is, if so, what implications would this have for how we view the physical and places now? So do any of you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think most do have that kind of ethereal sense, and I think that they're looking at the intermediate state, kind of between the rapture and the new heaven and the new earth. And they don't go past that to the new heaven and the new earth and the resurrection body and where that is. I think it's good.
Yeah, I think that's a good. It starts with the fact of how we think of our soul, body, and I think most people think of heaven as just these disembodied souls. And even again, Alcorn makes a point of that now in his Heaven book. He makes a good case that our souls are not disembodied. There's some kind of temporary body, most likely. And even in Revelation, when you study Revelation, there's the, thanks for being with us. Yeah. Yeah, that's all right. That he, you know, again, it doesn't make sense that our soul would just be sort of floating around, you know, or whatever. I mean, and again, the Bible doesn't say it, but it does say that when, in the vision that John has in heaven, when the martyrs are crying out, they are wearing robes. So that's a vision that he's seen. And I happen to think that we're going to have some kind of temporary body. You know, if I died right now, you know, George, who died recently, he has some kind of temporary body. But when you see him again, you're going to recognize him. He's going to have his resurrection body. You're going to have your resurrection body. And so that in and of itself is an incredibly physical, it's a very physical thing. There's a total physicality about that doesn't change all it does, but you have a stronger body, a smarter mind, and so forth. So again, it translates into the fact that the place that it is also going to be. We know what a wall is. We know what a floor is. We know what these kinds of things. But again, it's going to be the greatest floor we've ever seen, the greatest wall we've ever seen, the greatest, the most beautiful house we've ever seen, the most beautiful car we've ever, and so on and so forth. Yeah.
Well, what about animals? I have a fondness for dogs. Mm-hmm. And I've had a number of them, and when they pass, it breaks my heart.
Yeah.
Tears. And I'm wondering if I will ever see them again.
Yeah. Again, I think Alcorn thinks, and so did. By the way, one of the books on here too. I want to highlight another book here, and then I'll answer your question. Is on page 6. It's the book by Peter Kreeft. We have it here. It's also one of my top 10 books. The problem with Peter Kreeft's books, I don't know that it's a problem, but it's more. He's a philosopher. So when you read that book, you really have to think. I mean, it's not like an easy book to read, but if you read it and you're interested in heaven, and his title is Heaven, the Heart's Deepest Longing. And so it's really a book of apologetics. I think, in my opinion, it's the best apologetics book ever written. So I don't know if he even purposely wrote it as an apologetic, but basically what he does in that book is he talks about, like some of you may or may not be, for instance, some of you in a difficult marriage or have been in a difficult marriage. Or you're single and you want to be married. The challenge for a lot of people, like there's a lot of people that stay single because they don't want to make a mistake. It's like, I'd rather be I'd love to be married, but not to the wrong person. So I'm going to take the risk and not marry. Or, I'm going to wait for the right person, whatever. But again, what everybody would love to have is a great relationship, whether it's a friend or a spouse or whatever. Everybody longs for that. And some people get that to some extent. But nobody gets a perfect spouse. And you're not perfect. You're not a perfect piece of that either. So but here's his point. What he does in this book is he takes everything like that, including animals. And he says, God made animals and he made them good. And animals as well have faced the fall. That's why, if you watch a lion in the wild and you see him hunt, and it's brutal, it's violent. It's not good for the gazelle, or the impala or whatever he's munching on. But again, that's a natural thing. But in the millennium, and this is when we went to the millennium last time, a few weeks ago when we were talking about the millennium, there are, so this has to be the millennium, or it has to be heaven, or it could be both in some cases, where it talks about the lion and the lamb, for instance. Now, I happen to think that's talking about the millennial kingdom because of what's going on in that particular passage and the descriptions of it. But in heaven, when we come back with Christ, it says we're riding white horses. So we at least know for sure there's horses. But again, my view, and Kreeft brings this out in this book. He talks about animals. He totally believes we're going to have animals. And the issue is, are we going to have our pets? Like, am I going to have Lucy and Lacey and Annie, our 3 golden retrievers? I couldn't name all the cats I've had. I've had like 26 cats, but I probably could, but we don't want to waste our time on that. But my view, here's what John Piper says, and I love this. And I can't remember where he wrote about this, but I love what John Piper says. Wouldn't it be like God that we get to heaven and we're walking around and we're seeing all these beautiful things that we've never seen before? But then we start seeing familiar things. We start seeing, again, people that we knew on earth, family member, whatever, and we embrace and we're just experiencing this incredible joy at seeing people we haven't seen in a while. And then he says, wouldn't it be like God that as you're walking along, all of a sudden, what's your favorite dog? What's the best dog you've had?
When I was 5, my dad got him for me. He was a husky and Australian shepherd. Pokey.
Okay, that's a cool mix, yeah. Pokey?
Pokey. Yes.
And so what Piper says, wouldn't it be like God that Pokey starts running towards you?
Yeah.
I mean, and I think about that and I go, yeah, that would totally be like God. And I don't even think it's possible. I think it's very likely that's going to be the case.
That description you gave is perfect for that dog. Because we'd go on vacation up the Russian River for 1 week or so, and there was a vet down at the valley. And so when we got back and went in to get Pokey, he would see me and he would
Yeah.
run and jump,
Yeah.
jump on
Yeah.
me. Yeah.
No, I love seeing, you know, like some of my favorite, I love cats. And so like Richard Ducker, who some of you knew, you know, he loved cats too. And we used to talk about the kind of wild cats we'd have. And, you know, he's going to have a tiger and I'm going to have a, you know, jaguar and all this kind of stuff. And, but you see these videos of people even now that raise a tiger or and they haven't seen him before. And then the tigers, you know, they run to him and they jump on him and practically kill him. But they're still sort of finesse, but they're so big and everything, you're still probably going to get hurt a little bit. But I just think that picture of your dog. Now, a cat, is a cat going to run? You know, I mean, I love cats, but my cat's going to be just like waiting there for me, you know, and then and he's going to be sort of standoffish, and then I'll pet him, and then they'll start purring and gradually warm up to you. But maybe they're going to be more restored, you know, I don't know. But no, again, do we know this for sure? No. You know, does the Bible have verse and chapter and verse? But I think it is a good thing. It's a wonderful thing to think about. And this is why I think Lewis is so appealing, is his most read works are the Chronicles of Narnia. And what does he do? It's all animals, essentially. And they talk. And I often think about this, that I don't think Eve was shocked that a snake was talking to her in the garden. And at the time, the snake was beautiful. Now, there's still people like Crocodile Hunter. He sees a cobra that's about to snap at, oh, what isn't she gorgeous? And I'm like thinking, no, she's not. You know, it's like, yeah, you're crazy, you know, but you got to love the guy, you know, his passion for animals. But yeah, I just think that when God made animals, they were beautiful and they behaved in a different way than they have since the fall, and they treated each other as animals in a different way than before the fall. And I just think that when all creation groans, it doesn't say some of creation in Romans. All creation groans. My view is that includes all the animals that he's made. And that God made them good. And there's something in us. We love it. Most people love it. I mean, there's a few crazy people that don't like animal. I don't know what's wrong with these people. But anyway, most people love animals, you know, and you're either a cat person or a dog person or a snake person, whatever. But again, most people do love animals. But again, for God to create all that and have us enjoy that and then just completely take that away, to me it just doesn't make a lot of sense. It does make sense that God would restore that. And how like God would it be to give us those pets that we loved again? Yeah. So, yeah.
I read somewhere, I don't remember where, that one of the things that's interesting is nowhere in the Bible does it say the snake ever walks again. When we talk about restoration. Just just a thought.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
reading that somewhere too.
Okay. I think we talked about. Yeah, we pretty much talked about everything. Unless anybody has a question, I think we're good. Question or a comment? Okay, so what I'll do is in the next few weeks I'll be working on a new schedule for the new year, and we're going to do how many of you are planning on doing the historical theology? Okay, awesome. So I'm going to do Saturdays. You know, I'm sorry for some of you Mondays were better, but I don't know. It's just for me, it's sort of nice to just have one time instead of two times, just with everything going on. So I'll come up with some kind of schedule. It's historical theology is probably either going to be once or twice a month. It just sort of depends, because I'm going to try and track it with how it deals with whatever we're dealing with in systematic theology. But both those will be I sort of think that we're probably not going to video them anymore, because all of these are on video. And that way it's not more work for you guys to be able to put more. I mean, everything's been, we might want to consider videoing the ones that I didn't do, just because, you know, again, the people that filled in for me they don't read like I do. So I've had people say, Can you do it again? Can you do that one again? And again, the guys who did it did a great job. But so we might redo some of them, but again, we don't have to. But I think all of them are available on video now on our YouTube channel. And so maybe we'll post a link or something when we're doing these in the Flash or whatever, or at least let people know there's a playlist, because sometimes you can't make it. Yeah, the new ones we will do. Yeah, so we will record the historical theology ones. And yeah, so again, historical theology, Greg Allison. There's one, Amanda, just because I'm thinking about this right now, can you come up with an idea of how to get, like when books are on special, if we can have like a list of people that want to be part of that? Because I see stuff all the time, like I'll see like, historical theology was $4.99 2 weeks ago on Kindle.
Yeah.
Well, that's a great deal. Because again, it's a $40 book or $50 book. Well, if you want it on Kindle, you can get it for,
Like a book email list.
Yeah, something like that, because every day I'm looking at stuff and I often see stuff, but it's like trying to get that to people and whatever. But if people want to be a part of that, and there's certain things that I think we just need to make available, like in the Flash, like Tim Challies daily. He has Kindle deals every day. Ebooks on X also has books every day, and systematic theology has been $4.99 before on that.
Wow.
The workbook even is on Kindle.
Right.
Sometimes for $3.99 or what have you. But it's sort of nice to have if like you're away from your house or whatever, and you're like, I'd like to at least do some reading, and you're in line somewhere or whatever. Hopefully you're not doing it while you're driving. But yeah.
Speaking of books, you mentioned Gary Habermas's book.
Yeah.
You said he was a philosopher. So is he difficult reading, or?
He's not. I mean, you wouldn't have a problem with him. It is academic. It's academic. So I think the first book, I haven't gotten through the first two, but what he's doing is he's sort of tackling. He has, I'm pretty sure he has 2 PhDs, and both of them are related to the resurrection. But one of the things he's done is he's kept up with critical scholarship, like what the liberals are saying and all that kind of stuff. And so one of his books, just all it does is addresses all the liberal arguments against the resurrection. And that's what he deals with in that book. Then he does another book where it's just what is the historical evidence and archaeological evidence at the time. And he does a whole book on. So what he does is he takes 4 areas where the resurrection has been attacked and deals with it at the scholarliest of levels with tons of footnotes and bibliography and the whole thing. And so he's really writing this for scholars. But it's not that, anybody here wouldn't be. If you have a college education, if you've had to read books in college and do papers and stuff, you're going to have no problem reading any of his stuff.
I haven't read it yet, but I just recently purchased it. He did a book that he co-authored with Michael Licona called The Case for the Resurrection of Jesus.
Yeah.
That I think is probably one of the more readable.
Yeah, it's more lay oriented. Yeah. And Mike Licona is another, he's probably the second most scholarly guy that's known on the resurrection today.
He's like a protege, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, so, but again, if you're looking for scholar, again, I read both. I read the scholarly stuff and I read the lay stuff. But again, to me, if you're going to know about anything today as a Christian, you need to have some evidence for the resurrection, and you need to have some evidence for the soul. You have to read on those things, because those are the 2 issues that if anybody can buy into either of those things, now they're hooked. They're hooked because they don't have an out now. There's no out. If the resurrection, if the evidence is so good for the resurrection and so compelling for the resurrection that there's no way out of it, they got to deal with Jesus. They have to. They don't have a choice. Now, most people don't, they'll run from it, they'll hide from it, whatever. But again, you've done your job if you've given a compelling case for the resurrection or a compelling case for the soul, then you can move forward with someone. But this book
on
yes,
soul?
yeah, he does tackle the resurrection. I don't know if any of his books he tackles the soul so much.
Not yet.
Not yet, yeah. But Moreland, J.P. Moreland, who did the Immortality, he has a book on the soul published by Moody Press. If you go on Amazon and just type in Soul, Moreland, Moody Press, that book is designed for lay people. All the other books I have on the soul are very technical. They're very scholarly. They're not easy reading at all. But that book is, if you want a simple book on the soul, that's it. Okay, the Moody Press book by J.P. Moreland on the soul. But I think every Christian should know about the soul. This Sunday, tomorrow, I'm talking about Marxism and materialism, and I actually have the book in the bibliography for tomorrow. Oh, you know what? I have my outline for tomorrow here. So I have it here. It's called The Soul. It's J.P. Moreland. The Soul, How We Know It's Real and Why It Matters. I'm actually going to point it out tomorrow too, because I've got it underlined. I've got a few, but I have 3 pages of bibliography on Marxism for tomorrow. But I'm going to point out a few books that I think you should read. But again, Marxism is something all Christians should know about today too, because half our population are Marxists. And the media, all the points of influence, education, media, law, politics, etc., is controlled by Marxism in our country. Okay, so if you don't know about Marxism, that's where critical race theory comes from. That's where BLM comes from. The transgender movement, all that stuff is Marxist. It's all Marxist. So you got to know something about Marxism as a Christian in America today. If not, you don't know how to talk to half the people you're talking to. And you don't know how to decipher the information that's coming at you from a Marxist perspective. So it's super important. All right. Well, let me pray for us. Thank you for participating in this. And yeah, it's been fun. Great stuff. I hope you enjoy. And tell people, okay? Give testimony. Say you need to go to systematic theology class. One thing you could do too is buy this for people in church. Say, here's a Christmas present. And take the class, okay? But again, just tell people. Again, outside of the studying the Bible itself, things like BSF, doing Bible studies, that's the most important thing. That's more important than this. But next to that, this is incredibly important, because then you're putting the pieces together about how does the whole Bible fit together in relationship to the topic of salvation and so forth. So anyway, I hope you really enjoyed it, and take it again. Do it again if you can. I'd encourage you to. I am. I'm going to do it again.